Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion of the impact the pandemic has had on maternity, the effect on those expecting and their family around them. Here to discuss this with me, Kiki Hansard, head of Birth Bliss Academy, who founded the campaign, mum-to-be and chief executive of Make Birth Better, Nikki Wilson, and Conservative MP Alicia Kearns. Nikki, your experience, your third pregnancy, what has it been like for you so far?
Well, I consider myself very lucky. I've just entered my second trimester and I had a positive 12-week scan, but without my husband with me. I, like women in my position, paid for a private scan because I was too terrified to go into my NHS scan alone because of my history of trauma. What I will say is that what my experience was absolutely echoed what we've heard from the more than 500 women who've contacted us, which is that one of the main issues that's causing greater stress and anxiety is poor communication. So, for example, in my letter about my scan date, there was no reference to the fact that partners were not allowed. The same has come through for the 20-week scan, so it's entirely up to me to clarify what the situation is. There has been no COVID-specific guidance at any stage on how COVID might impact my maternity journey or my experience.
And Alicia Kearns, it is another postcode lottery here, isn't it? Because each trust has a different policy.
Absolutely. As I said, the reason I launched this campaign and got involved, from my perspective, is that I haven't had these restrictions. And so I was absolutely heartbroken when I came across Kiki on social media and discovered that women like Nikki were having to do this on their own. It is not right. And if some hospitals during the national lockdown between March and June did not put any restrictions in place and yet had no COVID outbreaks, there is absolutely evidence that this can be done safely, and it must be because of the difference it makes to women and to clinical outcomes.
What about the risks to mums, Alicia? Because at the beginning, in the early stages of coronavirus, pregnant women were told to shield and to take extra precautions. What do we know now?
So what we know now from my conversations with the chief medical officers and with the Royal College of Midwives and Obstetricians is that in your first 2 trimesters, the risk is pretty low. It's pretty much what it is with everyone else. But once you get to your 3rd trimester, the risk to you is higher. Not enough to put you in the must shield category, but in a category where you should be taking every precaution you can. And it's because of the impact it has on your lungs and the amount of oxygen you have, and essentially the fact that your baby squeezes your lungs. So the risk is much higher. That's why pregnant women must go and get their flu vaccine. That's why we've got 30 million flu vaccines around the country. But yes, in the 3rd trimester, women should be talking to their employers and making sure they're taken off frontline work.
Kiki, one of the unintended consequences of this pandemic has been people not seeking medical help when they might need it, not for coronavirus, but for other issues. Is that the same in pregnancy, that women who might need to be seen are avoiding it because they're concerned about going into hospital?
Yeah, absolutely, because obviously they've been concerned about catching COVID. But also, I guess you want to stay away from hospitals when you know they're over full with people that are unwell. So there are women that might not listen to their gut feeling when they think maybe something's wrong and are not going into hospitals when they should. There might be other women that are worried about inductions of labour, for example, when they know they are not going to be able to bring someone with them. They're going to have to be on their own. So they might think that they'd rather wait and see how things go. So I'd like to urge everyone that's pregnant to think about those things, that if you are worried, if you have concerns, that you do contact your midwife, you go to the hospital and you check up on all those things and make sure that your baby's moving frequently as they should. So yeah, that is one of the kind of downsides or other worries, that the fear can be so great of being on your own in this time that it overwhelms you and overtakes everything else, and you can't think straight because you're just so worried about having to be on your own. And I think that is not something that's being considered or taken into account.
There is fear and anxiety, Alicia, isn't there, in pregnancy? And I suppose in mine, I took it for granted that I could just go and get checked up and get that reassurance when I needed it. And that reassurance is really important, isn't it? If women don't seek help, what can happen?
You're absolutely right. I spent a lot of my last few weeks of my pregnancy, last time in and out of hospital because I couldn't feel anything. Tragically, St George's Trust has put out some stats that shown that the number of stillbirths during the national lockdown went from 2.3 out of every 1,000 births before lockdown to 9.3. That's more than twice the national average. It is so important that women, no matter how scared you are, that you go to hospital if you have any concerns at all. But it is worrying. You know, I had a woman write to me 2 days ago saying that she changed hospitals midway through her labour because she hadn't realised she wouldn't be allowed her partner, and she was certain that she was in labour, and she literally got in a taxi and travelled 15 minutes to the nearest hospital that did allow her partner to be there with her. This is putting people at risk, not just in the last few months where you have to act on your gut instinct. That's the most important thing in pregnancy, but it's putting people at risk throughout the entire process.
Nikki, we are really short of time, but if women listening to you feel what you said resonates and they are feeling very concerned, where can they get help?
So visit makebirthbetter.org for loads of support and information around trauma. And if you are really suffering during your pregnancy and you're worried about your mental health, please talk to someone. Obviously your midwife, GP, your partner. It's so important to raise those concerns because you can be referred to specialist services which will be able to give you the support you need.
It is out there. Kiki Hansard, Nikki Wilson and Alicia Kearns, thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.